When people hear the name Marsh, they probably think of insurance, and that makes sense. But I went into the latest official filing Marsh submitted to the SEC, and I found a difference that completely changes the way we should understand this company. Marsh operates around the insurance industry, but it does not function like a traditional insurance company. It does not primarily make money by collecting premiums and paying claims. It makes money by helping companies, governments, insurers, and investment funds decide which risks to take, which ones to transfer, how to protect their employees, and where to put their money. And Marsh gets paid for being in the middle of those decisions. So the question in this video is not simply what services does Marsh provide. The more important question for an investor is this: how does Marsh turn knowledge, relationships, and client trust into $27 billion in revenue? And most importantly, is that business model as resilient as it looks?
To answer that, we need to rebuild the business from the ground up. First, we will look at where the money actually comes from. Then, we will find out who pays Marsh and why. And finally, we will get to a clue that changes the story. Marsh appears to have 4 major businesses, but they do not all carry the same weight. In January 2026, the company updated its brand from Marsh McLennan to Marsh. But behind the new name, 4 familiar businesses still remain: Marsh Risk, Guy Carpenter, Mercer, and Marsh Management Consulting, which still includes Oliver Wyman, Lippincott, and Nera. At first glance, we might think we are looking at 4 completely different companies, but the filing organizes them into just 2 major groups.
The first is called Risk and Insurance Services. That is where we find Marsh Risk and Guy Carpenter. The second is called Consulting. That is where we find Mercer and Marsh Management Consulting. And to understand how much each business actually contributes, imagine that Marsh receives a $100 bill. Out of those $100, $54 come from Marsh Risk, $10 come from Guy Carpenter, $23 come from Mercer, and $13 come from Marsh Management Consulting. That means roughly $64 out of every $100 in revenue comes from businesses related to risk, insurance, and reinsurance. The other $36 come from consulting. And this is the first important conclusion. Marsh is diversified, but it is not divided into 4 equal parts. Its main engine is still the world of risk and insurance.
And that is why, to understand where most of the business comes from, we should start with the largest one, Marsh Risk. Imagine a company with factories in 5 different countries. It ships products by sea. It stores private information belonging to millions of customers. It has thousands of employees, and it depends on computer systems that cannot afford to go down. That company is exposed to fires, accidents, lawsuits, cyber attacks, supply chain disruptions, and many other problems. It could call an insurance company directly and simply accept the first policy it is offered. But the risks faced by a large corporation usually do not fit neatly into one simple insurance policy. That is where Marsh Risk comes in. Marsh studies the risks the client faces. It designs the insurance program. It compares the available options, and it negotiates with insurers. It helps decide how much risk should be transferred and how much the company itself can retain. And it also provides support when a loss or claim occurs.
So Marsh is not simply selling a policy. It is selling an entire structure for managing risk. And the larger, more international, and more complex the client becomes, the harder it may be to replace all of that work. The relationship does not necessarily end after one sale. Coverage has to be renewed. Risks change. New facilities are added. The company acquires other businesses. New digital threats emerge. And the entire program has to be reviewed again. This is where an attractive characteristic for an investor begins to appear. Marsh can participate repeatedly throughout the life of a client. It does not have to start from scratch every year if the relationship continues. But inside Marsh Risk, there is another business worth paying attention to. And this is where we find what we might call M&A's acquisition machine. Because Marsh does not work only with giant multinational corporations.
It also reaches mid-sized businesses, individuals, and private clients through Marsh McLennan Agency, known as MMA. And here I found a number that shows how Marsh has expanded that network. Since its first acquisition in 2009, MMA has acquired more than 135 agencies. That means Marsh has not limited itself to hiring salespeople and opening offices from scratch. It has also acquired agencies that already had clients, employees, local knowledge, and relationships built over many years. Think about a regional agency that knows hundreds of businesses in its local market. Marsh can acquire that agency and connect those local resources, analytics, insurers, and other services. That can accelerate growth. But for a shareholder, an obvious question appears. How much of Marsh's growth comes from winning new clients, and how much comes from buying the companies that already had those clients?
The filing tells us that acquisitions are an important part of MMA's expansion. But this section of the filing still does not tell us how much Marsh paid for those agencies, how much they contributed to results, or whether every acquisition produced the expected return. To find that out, we would have to dig into the financial statements, cash flow, debt, and the acquisition notes. That is one clue we will have to save for later. But first, we need to meet the company that, in practice, insures the insurers. Now let's move on to Guy Carpenter. And this part may sound strange at first, because even insurance companies need protection. Imagine an insurer that covers thousands of homes in an area exposed to hurricanes. If a major catastrophe hits, it could receive an enormous number of claims all at once. To avoid being hit too hard by a single event, that insurer can transfer part of the risk to another company. That is reinsurance. In simple terms, it is insurance for insurance companies. Guy Carpenter helps calculate risk, design protection, and negotiate with reinsurance markets. But it also works with solutions that go beyond traditional reinsurance.
For example, it can help transfer risk through catastrophe bonds and other structures connected to the capital markets. So Guy Carpenter does more than connect one insurer with another. It can also connect the risk of a hurricane, an earthquake, or another extraordinary loss with investors willing to take that risk in exchange for a return. This division generated approximately 10% of Marsh's revenue in 2025. It is not the company's largest business, but it occupies a very specific position inside the financial system. It sits between insurers, reinsurers, and the capital markets. And to understand why that position is so valuable, we need to follow the clue that really explains how the money comes in. At this point, we understand what Marsh Risk and Guy Carpenter actually do, but we are still missing the most important question. Who pays Marsh? There is no single answer. These businesses receive commissions and fees for placing insurance, negotiating reinsurance, and providing consulting services. The amount can depend on the type of coverage, the insurer selected, and the role Marsh plays in the transaction.
Marsh Risk also receives payments from insurance companies for analytics, consulting, administration, and other services. In certain cases, it also earns commissions related to the volume or profitability of the business placed. And there is another, less obvious source of revenue. Marsh Risk and Guy Carpenter may temporarily hold premiums or claim-related funds on behalf of other parties. While those funds are in their custody, they can also generate interest income. That gives us a more complete picture. Marsh can make money through fees paid by clients, insurance-related commissions, payments from insurance companies for certain services, and in some cases, interest earned on money it temporarily holds on behalf of others. For an investor, this diversity can be positive, but it also raises an uncomfortable question. Can Marsh always recommend the best solution for the client when part of its compensation may also come from insurance companies? I am not saying that anything improper is happening. The point is that this business model requires transparency, controls, and trust. Because reputation is not just an extra feature of the business. Reputation is part of the product Marsh sells. And with that idea clear, let's move on to the company's second major engine, Mercer. So far, we have talked about insurance, reinsurance, and corporate risk. But Marsh is also involved in decisions related to employees, pensions, healthcare, and investments. That is where Mercer comes in. Mercer generated approximately 23% of the company's total revenue in 2025. Its business is divided into three major areas: health, wealth, and career. Let's translate that into plain English. In health, Mercer helps companies organize health insurance and other employee benefits. In career, it advises companies on compensation, incentives, employee evaluation, skills, organizational structure, and human resources. And in wealth, it helps manage retirement plans and other investment funds. And this last area contains a number worth paying attention to. At the end of 2025, Mercer managed approximately $692 billion in assets. But be careful, that money does not belong to Marsh. Those are client assets that Mercer either manages or advises on.
The company can earn fees based on the amount of assets under management, the number of members served, or the services provided. That can create recurring revenue as long as clients keep their plans, funds, and contracts in place. But it also creates a dependency. If asset values rise, some fees can increase. If markets fall, asset values and the revenue tied to them can also come under pressure. So Mercer does not depend only on winning more clients. Part of its business can also move with the financial markets. And we still have one consulting business left, the one most people rarely associate with Marsh. The final major piece is Marsh Management Consulting. Here we find three different names. Oliver Wyman advises companies on strategy, finance, risk, restructuring, mergers, artificial intelligence, and business transformation. Lippincott focuses on branding and design, and Nira Economic Consulting performs economic analysis for complex business and legal issues. This group generated approximately 13% of Marsh's revenue in 2025. Unlike an insurance policy that may renew or a fund that may remain in place for years, many consulting projects have a beginning and an end. A company hires Oliver Wyman to solve a problem. The team performs the work, it delivers its conclusions, and the project ends.
That means Marsh has to keep winning new engagements and keep its consultants busy. But this division can also open the door to broader relationships. A company may begin by hiring Marsh for strategic advice. Later, it may need help managing the risks of an acquisition. Then it may need to review employee benefits. And eventually, it may need insurance for the newly combined organization. The filing itself shows that, in some markets, Mercer and Marsh Risk go to clients together. That tells us the four businesses are not completely isolated from one another. They can share relationships and provide multiple services to the same organization. And after seeing how all these pieces fit together, we arrive at the central question. What is Marsh actually selling? After going through all four divisions, we can return to the central question. Marsh does not manufacture computers. It does not build cars. It does not sell food. And it does not primarily operate like an insurance company that collects premiums and pays claims. Its real product is harder to touch. Marsh sells knowledge, data, analysis, access to markets, negotiating power, and relationships built over many years. That is why its business may require fewer factories, less inventory, and less machinery than an industrial company.
But it also means that a large part of its value sits inside the people who work there. Marsh had more than 95,000 employees at the end of 2025. In this business, the expert who knows the client, understands the market, and maintains the relationship can be just as important as the company's brand. And that creates a tension. Employee expertise can be a competitive advantage, but those employees can also leave. Competitors can hire them, and some clients may follow the person they have worked with for years. The filing acknowledges that competition is not only about winning clients. There is also intense competition to attract and retain qualified professionals. But that is not the only threat. There is another one that tries to eliminate the intermediary altogether. And this brings us to the other major investment question.
What happens if companies start buying insurance directly?
What happens if they decide to self-insure? Or what happens if a digital platform uses data and artificial intelligence to compare coverage without the need for a traditional broker? Marsh acknowledges that it competes with other global and regional brokers, but it also competes with insurers that sell directly, banks, consulting firms, investment managers, and digital platforms. And in consulting, new competitors are also emerging that use generative artificial intelligence. That does not mean technology will automatically eliminate Marsh. The risks faced by a multinational corporation, an insurance company, or a pension fund may be too complex to solve with nothing more than a website. But it does mean the company has to prove that its advice adds enough value to justify its fees and commissions. The question is not whether a computer can generate a report. The question is whether it can replace the trust, negotiation, and accountability required when a company is protecting billions of dollars. That may be where Marsh's defense lies, but it may also be where its vulnerability lies.
And before reaching a conclusion, we need to stop and look at what the filing still cannot prove. After following all these clues, we can now understand how Marsh makes money, but we still cannot say whether its stock is a good investment. The filing shows us the structure of the business. By itself, it does not tell us how much the company is growing organically, how much of that growth comes from acquisitions, what margins each division produces, how much cash the company generates, how much debt was used to acquire agencies, or how much shareholders are paying for those earnings.
To answer those questions, we would need to review management's analysis, the income statement, the cash flow statement, the balance sheet, and the notes to the 10-K. And there, we should pay particular attention to whether Marsh Risk is growing by winning more clients or simply because insurance premiums are rising, whether Mercer is growing because of new contracts or because financial markets went up, whether the consulting business is maintaining strong employee utilization, whether MMA's acquisitions are generating attractive returns, and whether cash is growing faster than debt. And with those questions still open, we can finally reach the conclusion. How does Marsh make money in 2026? The answer is simpler than it first seemed. Marsh makes money through two major engines. The first, and clearly the most important, is risk and insurance services. There, Marsh helps companies and insurers identify, transfer, and finance risk through Marsh Risk and Guy Carpenter. The second is consulting.
There, Marsh helps organizations manage employees, healthcare, investments, strategy, and business decisions through Mercer and Marsh Management Consulting. But behind all those names, there is one underlying business model. Marsh steps into difficult decisions. It connects clients with markets and solutions, and it turns that position into fees, commissions, and revenue tied to assets, members, and funds under management. So my conclusion is this: Marsh is not a table with four equal legs. It is primarily a massive risk intermediary and advisor, supported by a consulting business that expands and deepens its client relationships.
The strength of the model lies in its scale, expertise, licenses, data, and accumulated trust. The weakness is that this trust depends on people, regulation, and clients continuing to believe they need an intermediary. So the final question is no longer, does Marsh sell insurance or consulting? The right question is, can Marsh continue turning relationships and expertise into recurring revenue while integrating acquisitions and proving that artificial intelligence strengthens the intermediary rather than replacing it? That is where Marsh's story in 2026 stops being just a story about insurance and starts becoming an investment story. This is Renzo Market Lab. We do not follow narratives. We audit the numbers.